So today we're actually going to step away from all the noise. We're going to explore something that we all experience literally every day, but rarely stop to examine: the unspoken. In this explainer, we're diving into the architecture of silence. I want you to imagine silence not just as, an empty room, but as a structure that we actually build around ourselves. Because as we'll see, silence can be a symbol of profound wisdom, a crushing burden of grief, or even a pretty serious emotional danger. Why do we associate silence with depth? Think about that pause right there. Notice how it feels. It's kind of a psychological paradox, isn't it? An absolute absence of sound can somehow carry this immense, almost physical weight. When the noise is stripped away, we don't just find nothingness. We usually find a presence. We instinctively associate quietness with depth, basically because silence forces us to listen to what's happening just beneath the surface of our immediate reality. Words are our bridges to one another, sure, but it's the quiet spaces between those words that actually define the boundaries of our relationships. Think about it for a second. The unsaid moments, they carry our memories, our hidden fears, and our deepest love. Silence isn't just a lack of language, it's a massive shaper of human identity.
Section 1. Silence as a message, the English framing of the unspoken.
You've definitely heard this phrase, silence speaks volumes. In the English-speaking worldview, silence is rarely just a simple void. Instead, what isn't said is actually understood to communicate far more than words ever could. It's this really indirect form of communication, and it's usually thick with ambiguity and hidden emotion. It's basically a psychological conflict playing out without a single sound being made.
And then you have the darker side of that act of silence, which is the silent treatment. This is the psychological tension of using silence as emotional punishment. It instantly creates distance, and it acts as passive aggression. In relationships, withholding your speech becomes a really powerful form of social control. The silence transforms from just a state of being into an intentional, highly tense action.
And we can't forget the deafening silence. This is such a wild paradox. It describes an absence of a response that is just so strong, so incredibly heavy with disappointment or public tension, that it literally becomes emotionally loud. It's a silence that is actively described as noise, a quiet so heavy you can actually hear it ringing in your ears.
Section 2. The burden of dignity, the Turkish perspective on quiet.
Over in Turkish culture, we find this incredibly beautiful phrase, Sükût altındır.
Translated literally, it means silence is gold, but the cultural meaning goes way, way deeper than just valuing a quiet room. In the Turkish worldview, remaining silent is an indicator of respect, emotional endurance, and profound maturity. It implies that silence is far wiser and more valuable than unnecessary speech. Actually, overspeaking, or failing to hold your tongue, is often seen as impulsive. It shows a distinct lack of personal discipline. Silence in this context is pure dignity.
But there is another, much heavier side to Turkish silence, and it's captured perfectly in this visceral metaphor. Ağzını bıçak açmıyor.
Even a knife cannot open their mouth. This describes a state where someone is emotionally unable or just completely unwilling to speak. The psychological imagery here is so heavy, it paints a picture of a person whose speech has basically been physically blocked by intense grief, profound shock, or just an overwhelming emotional burden. The silence is literally locked inside them.
Which leads us to derin sessizlik, or deep silence. And this isn't just a quiet room, it's a full-on existential weight. This kind of deep silence carries feelings of profound loneliness, vast emotional distance, and really intense inner reflection. It is the heavy, heavy quiet of the soul.
Section 3. Stillness of the Earth, the Lithuanian connection to mortality.
Let's pause and contrast this for a second. We just saw how the English concept of silence acts as this tense social signal, but the Lithuanian framing, it's entirely different. In Lithuanian emotional culture, silence is about endurance. It's about stillness and an existential calm that is tied really closely to sheer survival.
This brings us to a foundational, highly stoic phrase, tyla gera bila.
Silence is a good case. This perfectly illustrates a cultural mindset that places a massive premium on quiet endurance. It means that remaining silent is very often just the safest, wisest choice you can possibly make. It's deeply rooted in caution. Well, caution and practical wisdom. It's this underlying understanding that words can betray you, but silence protects you.
But as we look deeper, we find kaputila, Here, the concept of silence connects directly to physical stillness and mortality itself.
The silence of graves. This metaphor explores a really extreme, eerie kind of stillness. It represents a total absence of life, an emotional coldness, and an absolute hollow emptiness. It is the inescapable, ultimate quiet of death.
Finally, I want you to consider this incredibly powerful Lithuanian metaphor, tylėti kaip žemė. Imagine a vast, fog-covered, endlessly enduring landscape.
To stay silent like the earth. This describes a total, absolute refusal to speak. The psychological imagery is brilliantly stoic and immensely heavy. Think of the earth for a second. It absorbs absolutely everything, right? The rain, the steps of generations, the entire weight of history. It absorbs all of it, and yet it says absolutely nothing in return. It simply endures.
Section 4. The psychology of quiet. What remains unsaid.
I want you to really think about this for a moment. Why does silence feel so emotionally loud in our relationships? It's because, at our core, we are wired to connect. When someone we care about intentionally withholds their words, they are wielding immense social power over us. The silence becomes this void that our minds frantically try to fill with meaning, tension, and of course, anxiety.
And what about this? Why are grief and silence so universally connected across all these different cultures? Why do we trust silence more than words in our absolute darkest moments? It's largely because severe pain seems to transcend language altogether. The sheer weight of grief, much like we saw in the Turkish metaphor of the knife, it physically blocks our ability to speak. Words just become completely insufficient for the depth of what we're experiencing.
So the crucial takeaway from this explainer is this. Every culture teaches its people not only how to speak, but precisely when not to. Silence is an architecture we all live inside of. It can be a weapon of tension, a shield of dignity, or the stoic, quiet endurance of the earth itself. As we wrap up, I want you to linger on this one final thought. If the space between our words truly shapes who we are, what exactly is your silence building right now?